When we see lines converging on a horizon, we recognize it as a normal effect of perspective, or an optical illusion that describes the distance between objects. There's a similar convergence phenomenon with vertical lines in a tall building, for instance. But the eye isn't accustomed to this, and so when not intended as a special effect, photographers like to diminish this effect as much as possible. Also, convergence as a special effect appears to work better when used on shots of modern buildings that soar into the sky. Traditional architecture shots, on the other hand, seem to do better with the convergence minimized. In this image of a French chateau, there's a slight effect of convergence in the tower that could be a little distracting, as with the slight tilt of the main structure. The first thing to do is to drag some guides onto the image to assist with the transformations. Drag out a guide to establish the vertical line. Since the default color for guides is a light blue, you can change it to make it stand out more clearly. Choose Preferences, Guides in Grid. And here, change the color of the guides to something else. As with the previous examples, I've saved off some selections of the structure separately. I load the tower selection first. If it turns out that fixing the convergence on the most distracting element makes the image work, then I will not usually attempt to fix the minor convergence areas. When you're working on true-to-life images, try to only fix the most serious problems. If you fix every little optical glitch, you run the risk of creating something that looks a little too perfect. Now float the selection to its own layer. At this point, although it's tempting to work on the tower and exclusion on its own layer, it's best to view the background, so you get to make changes that are in scale and proportion to the surrounding scene. Now type Command or Control-T to access Free Transform. In this situation, I like to hold down the Option and Command keys or the Alt and Control keys to skew the object from the center. Hold down the Shift key as well if you like, to constrain the movement proportionately. Now uncheck the eye on the background layer to see the result of the transformation on the layer on top. You're now ready to use the rubber stamp tool to retouch the surrounding artifacts in the background layer. In the next part, I've floated a copy of the main structure to its own layer, and I'll demonstrate how I quickly use the rubber stamp tool in various modes, such as the darken and the lighten mode, to quickly erase the surrounding artifacts after the transformation. If you uncheck the eye on the layer, you'll see that you've developed duplicate towers at the very top. Select the background layer and the rubber stamp tool. To isolate your corrections to a certain area only, I like to marquee it off so it doesn't affect the areas with image detail. Then I set the rubber stamp tool blending mode to the lighten mode only and take a sample from surrounding lighter areas. Having the mask or the frisket in place keeps other parts from being affected. Check and uncheck the layer on top to see which parts need to be erased. And so on. So now that we've finished with all the transformations and all the retouching work that goes with it, we're ready to compare the difference. In the History palette, I'll make a snapshot so we can compare it with the original snapshot of the image. This was the original, and this is our convergence corrected perspective image.